Okay, it's another episode of Rise Up with Marc Mixon. Hello, Adam.
Hello, Mark.
How are you today, sir?
I'm good. This is like
Good.
I always think when we start these shows now, I think, we always started exactly the same way. So there could be 46 montages of, welcome back to Rise Up with Marc Mixon. I'm Marc Mixon. How you doing, Adam? I'm all right. How are you? It's always the same.
We do. It's not even a script. It's just a habit, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah, it's been a busy few weeks for both of us. We got the podcast. We got Adam and I are both doing some organizer training with the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation right now. It's been sort of a fun thing. This is my, I think, third time through this organizing for power training. I'm enjoying it. First time as the group leader, but it's been good. It's been good. I hope it's gonna help. I hope it's gonna. Well, I know that you have been wanting to get more involved in your union. Oh, hello, Mr. Douglas. Redrick Douglas is here.
Redrick Douglas. Yep.
I know you've been wanting to get more involved in your union. I know that at my work, there is some potential of all the unions going away, and I know that my staff is concerned about it. And we got several people from a couple of different unions who are in there with us, and of course the General Strike U.S. people. I keep wanting to say kids, but
well,
many of them are younger and new to organizing. But it's been great. If you are out there and you are interested in free organizer training, this Organizing for Power training class, they run once or twice a year. And it's I highly recommend it.
Yeah. I'm going to do a technical note here and just check. Go into your settings and make sure that you're using your microphone, because it sounds a little bit like you're on your computer mic. But
well, we did have problems. It sounds fine to me, obviously. But we had some.
And in the meantime, I will just say that I have been wanting to get into my union more. Feels a little bit on the 11th hour. That for most of my life and before, unions have been eroded to just about nothing, and union participation, I know in my union, is very, very low. Right to work laws now across the country are 27 out of 50 states. And I believe, I think it was South Carolina or something like that, recently passed laws to make it harder for certain people to strike, or basically effectively saying they can't strike at all. We're living in a country that is very anti-union right now, and then all the other problems going on within our government. So it's I hope that the things I learn and the stuff that I can do in the future will have any kind of effect. Hopefully they're not going to take it all away.
Yeah, and now I'm using this fancy microphone.
Yeah, and I can definitely tell the difference.
It's not just a prop, everyone.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, Seattle is one of the most unionized cities in the country, and still we are at historic lows. And it is, and even the unions we have, frankly, are a lot less powerful than the historic trade unions of 100 years ago, thanks to the 100 years of laws and fighting against the power generated by the people, by the powers that be, by the wealthy elite, and their bought politicians.
Yeah, I saw a video, an Instagram video that my friend Gina sent me. We could share it sometime on the show, but a guy asked ChatGPT, what it would look like if Project 2025 was implemented. And it was eerily basically what we're already going through. And just talked, and even ChatGPT knew that, we'd head towards a oligarchic rule. And, education would be disbanded in favor of religious education, and all kinds of different things that I just
You know, it's a fine line. A lot of these kids in the general strike Discord and signal chats that I'm in are talking about a lot of protests right now. They're always, trying to find
Hmm.
what the next protest to go to is, and I think it's great to try to show some solidarity and power, and at the same time, I feel like being reactive to every outrage that the Trump administration gives is not beneficial. Like, these people want us distracted and diffused and disheartened. Um,
True.
and I really feel we need to be focused on building community, building power, focused on concrete goals. Um, I feel like back when we had the Panther Party on and the Black Panthers, we discussed a bit the difference between like protest and rallies and demonstrations and having to have purpose behind those sorts of things. Otherwise, it is. I guess I'm reminded, and this was where I really both became. It's not where I completely became, upset with Democrats because it wasn't like Democrats' fault, but I became disenchanted with the idea of protest writ
Mm-hmm.
large. Was during the Women's March after the first Trump administration inauguration, because I was there and I was standing at the stage here in Seattle and texting with another friend. And when the march started, we were in the southeast side of the city in a park, marching to Seattle Center, and it took so long for us to get out of the park. There was 100,000 plus people there doing this demonstration, and by the time the first people got to Seattle Center, I was just leaving the park. And so it was, wall to wall people for the couple of miles between the rally point and the end of the march. And I remember thinking, if those people who just hit Seattle Center, if they had, instead of packing up and going home, if they had started setting up tents,
Mm-hmm.
if we had decided to occupy the city and cutting a swath of people 2 or 3 blocks long from the north to the southeast side of the city, this city would shut down. And this was happening in every major city. And I thought, like, if this movement was prepared to occupy right now, the demand could be getting rid of Trump potentially. There was enough people with enough demonstrated power that if they were willing to set up camp, too many to be arrested, too many to go to jail,
Right.
outnumbering the cops, city would shut down, the corporations would stop making money, and like suddenly that real power could be exercised. But instead, people marched for a couple of hours and waved signs and went home. And
Right.
then we suffered through 4 years of Trump, and now we're suffering through the next 4 years.
Right.
And
And the media always does a good job because the media is bought and paid for by the rich. They always do a great job of focusing on something that doesn't matter. Like, oh, look at the hats they're wearing. Like it's just like there's never a conversation about the importance of why they're doing it. What they're actually protesting for. But you're right. Yeah, that's there are more demonstrations that make people feel good rather than changes anything in the long run. But they've also, in many states, they've outlawed being able to clog up the street, being able to put up tents in much of the areas of downtown cities. Every time we show our power but don't use it fully, they go through the courts and make it illegal to do it again.
well, and I would say, as we get ready to segue, like that is in part my definition of protest. If you are not engaging in some sort of civil disobedience, you're not really protesting anything. If you're
Right.
going through the channels and getting permits and having a pre-planned march on a route that then disbands, that's not a protest, it's a parade. And
Right.
it's not right. It's not
Yeah.
it doesn't have the power. Like, protest needs to have some form of civil disobedience. We'll say peaceful civil disobedience.
Yeah,
we're on the airwaves.
of
So
course. Yeah, sometime I'll have to talk with you. We'll have to go into it a little more in an episode where it's just us. But maybe when we talk about our union episode. But I've got a coworker that I love him. He's a great guy. He calls himself a Democrat. I think he's more of a centrist. But he's very strongly opinionated about where you can protest and when you can protest. And if you get in the street and stop an ambulance from getting through, then you're evil. And he just doesn't believe in any of that. He thinks that it all should be, a protest should be something that doesn't inconvenience society. It's like, well, that's the point. The point is that the things we're protesting, the things that we're on the street for, are a problem for society. And we need your life to be less comfortable in this moment for you to realize that all of us over here are suffering and need your support. And he just won't hear it. He's very, very in his feelings about it.
Yep.
Or his fifis, whatever the kids say.
No one's immune to propaganda, and we have an awful lot of pro-establishment, pro-corporate propaganda in our society all the time. And we have, in the best case scenario, we have developed a watery thin solidarity. People don't have any sort of really deep solidarity right now. It's a thing we need to work on. And I'm going to use that as our segue. As I say, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends. I'm not going to say follow us on the socials. I've stopped social media altogether in my life, so there's nothing happening there yet.
Talk about that later. Yeah. Right. To figure out a game plan for that in the future, because you and I both are kind of allergic to social media.
But we're going to go ahead and talk with an activist, an organizer, a politician who has developed power in their community and used it to get elected previously, trying to change the system from the inside, and is now doing work providing assistance to some of our most disadvantaged and providing real coverage. So let's go ahead and run the intro. When we come back, we'll be talking with Krystal Marx, former Burien City Council person and the executive director of Real Change.
Some answers, a little bit of truth. Some answers, a little bit of truth. Some answers, a little bit of truth. A little bit of truth. A little bit of truth. Oh, dig deeper. Keep looking for the proof. Dig deeper. Keep looking for the proof. Dig deeper. Keep looking for the proof. Keep looking for the proof. Keep looking for the proof. Oh, some answers.
Oh, and I didn't bring her in. There we go, Krystal.
Hi.
Hello, Krystal. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I was grooving out to the music though, so if it went on for a while, you wouldn't have bothered me.
That's a catchy tune.
Yeah, that is a gentleman I work with, Barry Sebastian, and his musical project Deary. It's a fun little piece. Barry is a very talented young man.
Well, it's great. Tell him he's got my compliments, if that means anything to him.
Excellent. Well, and in the episode notes, I'm pretty sure. No, of course we do. We've got links to Barry's YouTube.
Yep.
And credit the music.
Awesome.
So, Krystal, I'm really excited to have you here. You are someone I have been following since your campaign for city council back when I was still doing social media. I was super excited when you got elected. And I was so energized. I had moved to Burien, I don't know, a few years before that, and just fell in love with the city. Like, before I moved to Burien, I was like, I thought of it as a hole in the wall sort of behind the airport. And then when I moved there, I was like, wow, this place has got it going on. It was,
Right? It's pretty great.
yeah. I became a proselytizer for Burien. I really enjoyed how for not a neighborhood of the city, I appreciated how walkable it was. As someone who was working on Seattle Center, I appreciated how I could get to work on transit faster than some of my coworkers who lived in the northern neighborhoods. It has, I'm obviously love food, and there's a whole lot of great food and places to drink and socialize in Burien. I was a huge fan. And then
So I hear the word "was" in there, Mark, and I feel like it's there for a reason.
Oh,
well, I still am a fan of Burien. I've moved to West Seattle, and I live on the White Center side of West Seattle. So I've got downtown White Center is real close to me here, and I still run down to Burien for some shopping and hit the gross out there, and still frequent a couple of establishments in Burien. But I've been very disheartened by the rightward swing in the city council and the using private sweeping agencies to sweep our unhoused neighbors, and the criminalization of the poor in Burien, and how Burien struck me that it could be a little beautiful Mecca in south of Seattle, and instead it has turned into sort of a right-wing NIMBY paradise, it feels like sometimes. So can you talk to me a little bit?
You set the stage so perfectly. I was like cracking my proverbial knuckles over here. Yeah, I can talk to you about that.
Please.
Yeah. So when I served on the city council, I ran in 2017. My husband and I moved here 2014, 2015. He had grown up here, went through the school district here, and joined the Army, swore he'd never move back, met me, and I was like, this place is pretty. We moved back. And my cousin, who is Katie Garrow, who is the labor secretary for the MLK Labor Council, she approached me after a couple other folks did and said, you know what, Burien, we're putting together a labor slate. We need people who care about the working class families here. Here's what's been done in Burien. And what she was referring to was a lot of the anti-immigrant stuff that was going on. The city was passing a what was it called? A sanctuary city ordinance, which really just meant that, police wouldn't ask people for their papers. That was all that it meant. And the pushback was intense. There was this smell bad ordinance that had been passed years prior that the ACLU of Washington was fighting. And it was really ramping up to a fever pitch when Trump got elected. So I said, yes, I ran. There were 4 of us. We completely flipped the council to a progressive council. And it was this beautiful moment of, hey, I think our people that live here are actually getting to have a say in their local government. And we hit the ground running. We overturned that smell bad ordinance in the first night. We passed tenant protections in Burien that were a first in Washington state, with the whole suite of them. Everything from first, last, and deposit to notice of time to move out was all in favor of the renters, with landlord opinion taken into account. And all these great things were moving forward. And then COVID hit. And I think that's when things started to shift further to the right again. People got isolated. That went back to that mindset of it's about me and protecting my family and my business and my resources. And we saw that with the pushback on passing hazard pay, $5 an hour for frontline workers. I worked hard with UFCW 3000. We knew the city was going to get sued, but we knew it was also lawsuit shopping because the grocery industry had tried it with the city of Seattle. So sure enough, we passed that ordinance with a lot of pushback by people who are still on the council who claim to be labor friendly. And sure enough, we got hit with that lawsuit and they lost. Burien won. The lawsuit was thrown out in court. And our frontline workers, got an extra $5 an hour for the rest of the COVID pandemic, as it was described by then Governor Jay Inslee. So even that though was like, it seemed like that was a bridge too far for a lot of people. Like, how dare you recognize workers? How dare you respect that people are putting their health and safety on the line for a minimum wage job that is not even making ends meet anyway, but I need to hoard my toilet paper. Like, the disconnect was so wild. And then, we approved permitting and siting for permanent supportive housing in our affordable housing demonstration program. That was with DESC, the Downtown Emergency Services Center. And that is at Bloomside, this beautiful place that was just opened last year in downtown Burien. It's over 90 beds of permanent supportive housing that focus on getting people off the streets into somewhere safe before making them face like, okay, what are the issues that you're having? The first issue is I don't have anywhere to sleep, dude.
Mhm.
Let's get them inside, get someone stabilized, and have supportive services around them. So there's counselors on site, there's doctors that come in. It allows people to choose, how do you want to move forward in your life without having their housing be at risk for that? And that seemed to be the point for a lot of folks. And I lost my reelection attempt in 2021. And I ran again this last 2023 cycle and also lost then. And what that told me, besides the fact that, okay, maybe I'm a little left leaning for Burien right now, is more that how smaller cities are starting to see the impacts of that isolation that COVID brought on, and how easy it became to turn insular and not to care about your community. And I think that we see that in Burien as it is today. And it's not about necessarily who's in power. It's about how our communities are viewing each other and how that does push up into local politics. We do have some really shitty people. Oh, no, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this podcast.
Oh, sure.
Okay. Because otherwise you're going to have a lot of editing.
Swear away.
Good. There are some kind of shitty people in office right now and at the local level who are running for higher office even. And that's really scary. But there's also there's a big community swell of this belief that because you have lived in the city longest, or you pay this much in property taxes, or kind of the classic NIMBY, but like on steroids, they've kind of this tidal wave that swamped over into Burien politics. And now you have a city council and a city that's run by people who are better suited for their HOA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really, I'd say the shift in Burien and what you're describing in Burien writ large really highlights how in our society we are essentially a caste society, and our system is built to protect capital. So those people who have property, who are property owners, they are, I can't say the first tier because the billionaire class is the first tier, but they're second or third tier citizens, whereas someone like me who's a renter, who, every year, like, I have not yet got my lease renewal, so I have to wonder, am I going to have to move again? Like, I don't have the security of having a home, right? I have a decent enough job, but I've not always made the best financial choices, and this is an expensive city. And
Yes, it is.
so and those of us, the criminalization of the unhoused in particular, right, who people refuse to regard as citizens. Like, our city governments are making choices that criminalize, injure, and kill their poorest citizens every year. Hundreds of people of our unhoused neighbors die in King County every year. And people don't want to think of them as citizens. They don't want to think of them as neighbors. But our city government, our system ought to be, in my personal opinion, focused on helping, protecting, and providing resources for the people who live here. I don't even necessarily want to say citizens, because somehow citizens has become a charged word in the Trump administration, and you need to have some sort of threshold. But I think anyone who lives in a place should be fully empowered and protected by the systems of that place. Like, you live here, you have the stake. You are you are who the city should be protecting. Instead, Seattle specifically, King County, Washington writ large, in part due to our no income tax, but in part for like we are like a mecca for the ultra rich and people. It's weird how we are propagandized as being some super left leaning place, Washington State, when we have, more billionaires per capita and they're here for a reason, and they're, spreading their propaganda for reasons. So getting off my soapbox for a hot second. If you listen to the podcast, I do that.
It's a good soapbox to have. We need more people on that particular soapbox.
So what do you see? You're still in Burien?
I am in Burien right now. It's for better or for worse. I'm here.
So what do you see as a path forward? I know you spent a fair bit of time in your campaign and in your time in office building power and building community. And there's been this rightward shift, but I can't believe that, that means it's over there. Frank, one of the things I loved about Burien, still love about the southwest side of the Seattle metro area, is that we are far more working class, that we are far more diverse than some of the northern neighborhoods. I appreciated on my bus ride to work every day how full, this was before the H line, the rapid ride has become, so riding the 120, the local, how full it was of working class people every day. Like these were the people who were making our society work. And those people have not gone away, much as Burien doesn't want to see them. It certainly wants their services still. Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. But then doesn't want to pay for their services. If you want to touch back on that, the local minimum wage vote that just happened in Burien too. I mean, you talk about a path forward. You've got, taking a really quick step back, the city of Burien, when we talk about homelessness, we made national news, international news for some things over the last couple of years of how city leadership, and that's the city council and the city manager and the city attorney specifically, how they both blamed churches for not doing enough. And then when churches stepped up to say, okay, like at Oasis Home Church, they opened their parking lot right there. Yeah. They opened their parking lot to have a monitored encampment that was just people in their tents, but they had to check in. They had a set of rules. They had an agreement with the church. The city of Burien said, actually, wait, no, shame on you for doing this. Despite us just having told you, the mayor, there's an infamous clip, Mayor Kevin Schilling, of him shaking his finger at people in the audience telling you churches should be stepping up. And he's a former church employee of St. Francis here in Burien. Churches should be stepping up to do more. And then a church steps up to do more, partnered with a nonprofit, limits government inefficiency that the right hates or loves to at least, bash on. But it eliminated that. We solved our own problems. We took care of each other, and the city sued them for not having gone through a permitting process that no other church would be required to go through, because that's the whole point of a church using their building for their living out their mission. So we see that pushback now happening. Obviously, that encampment closed down. People were scattered into the wind again. People were living in downtown Burien and sleeping in the parks and trying to eke out an existence. But there's another church actually just a couple blocks from where I live that is focused. It's Highline United Methodist, and they're on First Ave here in Burien, and they're focused on a day shelter. So they open up during the day, and they are the cold weather shelter at night. So when temperatures drop below a certain degree, which is also extremely messed up if you think that someone's going to be okay at 38 degrees, but at 37, that's just too cold. Let's just get in on that one. But they open up for that, but they're not allowed to stay full-time 24/7 because the neighbors don't like it. I was at that meeting. I was asked to moderate that meeting between the church and community members, like an open house. Let's answer your questions. We're going to do this shelter here. And the community members that showed up, plus Jonathan Cho, right-wing fake reporter, they showed up and they asked some really horrible questions. They talked about the crime that they swear is happening because of the day center being there, and the city shut it down. The city said, we had approved this contract for you, but we're actually going to take it back after our previous council had voted to approve it. So the path forward is, I think, doing what you were talking about in the intro with protests. You have to just do it anyway. You have the power to do it. What are they going to do? Are they going to sue every single organization? Probably not. The city's facing a multi-million-dollar budget shortfall. They don't have the money to spend on multiple lawsuits. They're still engaged in one right now against 3 unhoused people that Skitch, the South King County Coalition on Homelessness, is helping to put forward. So you have to just keep doing it anyway. And there's some folks that are, like the Wednesday Night Supper Club. They meet every Wednesday night at the Burien Transit Center and provide food. And that's it. Their mission is very limited. It is just food, happy people there to love on you and tell you that you matter, no matter what your circumstances are. And they see over 100 people every week and just feed them a hot meal. So you keep doing stuff like that, where it's providing, like, meeting the needs of your community. And then ideally there are folks that are there that are looking, seeing who's organizing these things, who's stepping up and helping to make sure they run smoothly. And then you ask them, what's your capacity for further help? Do you want to run for office and flip this back to a progressive city council? What is your vision for this community? Are you aligned with any other community groups? Are you supported by labor or faith community or teachers, or which are labor, but students? Like, where's your support coming from? Let's get you into a position where you can do more good, and just keep that kind of cycle of power building going. Because if without that, we have nothing.
Right. No, I say it on this show. I think I said it in my first episode. I keep coming back to it. Like, if we are willing to organize and work to make change, we can. Like, we are powerful enough together. And if we couldn't fight this system, they wouldn't spend so much time and money fighting us. Like, we do have the power if we are willing to take it, but it's hard work. It is.
Yeah.
Having worked on some campaigns recently, it's long, slow work, and it can be disheartening. But there's not a whole lot of choice, right?
Yeah.
If I may, real fast,
Please.
just for our audience, in case you're not really up to speed on kind of the changes that have been going on in America. The Supreme Court ruled in June 2024 that cities can criminalize homelessness without violating the Constitution. Let me roll up here. Cities have passed more bans on camping, sitting, and loitering. They have made existing bans more punitive, and they've enforced existing ordinances more strictly, and they have used sweeps to evict people from encampments. My question for you guys, since I don't live in that area, is what requests have been made on the state side for more public housing? Because obviously, with the inequality and the rising cost of living in the Seattle area, is there any mention to try to go back to something like that used to kind of meet the needs of people that just couldn't do it on their own?
I certainly have thoughts, but I'd like to go to Krystal first as our guest.
No, I love that. So there's a couple ways to answer this one. The first, cities used to be a really good partner when they were staffed well or had good folks at the helm in pushing for state legislation that addressed exactly those things, saying we don't have the resources at the city level to do X, Y, and Z. We're facing budget shortfalls, or we don't want to increase property taxes again in the limited amount that even cities can at 1/10 of 1% each year, whatever the property tax cap is. And so the ask has been on things like, can you please pass progressive revenue? Can you make sure you're passing a wealth tax, an income tax, a estate sales tax, like all of these creative things. But as the cities get more and more self-focused, there's like this Burien first talk in Burien, things like that, that they become more right-leaning. The ask is no longer on that. It's how do we prevent having to build more housing? So you can't count on your elected leaders at the city level as much anymore, because they're looking for ways to protect their small town charms. So as an individual person, it's linking up with organizations like the Washington Low Income Housing Association or the Seattle King County Coalition for Homelessness. It's finding the organizations that are doing that exact work in Olympia. They're meeting with people, they have lobbyists, and showing up and giving your personal testimony, saying why it matters to you, sharing your story, which can be really fucking vulnerable for a lot of folks. People don't like to have to share, hey, I was evicted because I couldn't make a payment. Because what does that say about them? We tie so much value to someone's worth as a worker to make money for their organization or to own a home or whatever it might be. But going to Olympia virtually or writing or showing up in person for Washington State at least, and saying, this is my story and how it's impacted me, and here's how I landed myself in a worse place. If you would just pass these types of laws, make sure there's housing for all of us, even if it's not housing with a view that, the NIMBYs think that we're all asking for. We just want a place that's safe. That is such a huge impact because lawmakers, there's a record of you being there. They have to hear you. And that's really, really huge. There's also associations like the Association of Washington Cities that work to protect cities' interests. And when that happens, they lobby together in a really strong way and say, actually, we don't want to increase or we don't want to do away with parking minimums because that means that people will park on our streets. We don't want multifamily housing because we want to protect single family zoning. It's just the whole system is designed to make it harder for us to impact change. And that's why it's important that we show up in mass so that they have to listen. I think that's the most effective thing that we can do.
Thank you for having like concrete actions that can be done. Like my thoughts would have been just about how our laws cater to like the construction industry, cater to the wealthy property owners, how, it is rent control, for example, is illegal in Washington State unless buildings are, owned and managed by a public entity, but no one likes to but we also have real estate lobbyists. I remember I used to work for the State Department of Transportation, and I remember working on Capitol campus in Olympia and wondering why, we had all these buildings downtown on the Capitol campus, and I remember asking about it, but we were no longer building those buildings. Now developers were building office buildings on the far reaches of Olympia, and all the new state offices were going in these buildings because some, real estate lobbyists had convinced state lawmakers that it was more economical to rent buildings than to own property. And I remember I heard that was like, because all those state legislators, they all rent, right? None of them own homes. It's we are really, Washington State is distressingly not the progressive paradise that
No.
we are marketed by the far right. We, and it's odd because people here do tend to be more progressive, although Brett Hamill, I think it was who's a comic writer and writes for South Seattle Emerald. I first saw from him, he created this little comic that talks about the inverse square law of Seattle progressivism, that Seattle is more progressive the farther away the policy is.
I hate how true that is because it hurts, but yeah.
We really, when you're talking about right here in my neighborhood, suddenly we get real fucking conservative. It's not, it's not, it's a real thing. It's funny and it's a distressingly real thing.
Yeah.
Let's shift just a hair. Well, what's our time at? Oh, good. Plenty of time. Let's shift just a hair and talk about your work now with Real Change. You are now the executive director at Real Change.
I am. It is the best thing. I have a kid who's 3 feet from me and a partner who's 10 feet from me. So it's one of the best things in life. I'm trying to wink. I love every second. I wanted to work for Real Change for over 20 years. We're a 30-year-old organization based out of Pioneer Square. Started in 1994 by Tim Harris, who also started a street paper in Boston, or was at least a part of the street paper in Boston, came out here. And the whole purpose of Real Change is to provide opportunity and a voice for folks experiencing homelessness and severe poverty, while also taking action on racial and economic injustice. So it's a 3-pronged mission for an organization, which, let me tell you, it's fun for a nonprofit to have 3 main huge pillars. But one of them is probably one of my favorite things is our newspaper. We've put out a weekly paper once a week. That's what weekly means, for 30 years, called Real Change News. It's an award-winning paper, and it takes direction from our vendors. And our vendors are made up of unhoused individuals who have stories to tell, who have lived experience that they want to share, and have their own ideas that are valuable on how to end homelessness and how to end poverty. And if we're going to talk about how we address things in an equitable manner, or ways that are actually like good solutions, you have to have the people that are closest to the pain being the closest, or trust that they are the closest to the solution. So they lead on everything we do. We also have our jobs aspect, which is where our vendors sell the paper that we create every week, and they make a living off of that. Paper costs $2. Vendors buy the paper from us for 60 cents, and they pocket the difference, so $1.40 or more. And it usually is more because folks love supporting Real Change. And then we also have Justice, which is our advocacy arm. We're still a 501c3, so we have to be really careful in how much time we spend, but we bring vendors to Seattle City Hall, and we don't tell them what to say, but we just make sure they know how the process works. Go forward and talk about this. They're talking about you. They're talking about your rights, your access to housing, your ability to vote, your ability to talk about like the soap and soda laws, the stay out of area prostitution and stay out of downtown area for like other drug related issues. The soap and soda laws that Seattle passed in 2024. Real Change News is within one of those areas. Our organization is within a soda blocked out area, and that means you can't even be high. You can't have drug paraphernalia on you. So you want to talk about, the hand up, not a handout thing that so many folks like to harp on. Real Change exists to do exactly that. We are providing a method for folks to have their own self-determination and advocacy by providing a job opportunity. We don't require documentation or an ID. It's just come in, take this orientation. You can sell a paper. We give 10 free papers to start. You can make $20 in this one day and start building your own business from that. And we help every step of the way. But with these laws that are passed, like the soap and soda laws in downtown Seattle, this literally makes what we do illegal, if you really want to think about it. And so our vendors show up at City Hall and say, hey, you're actually taking away the laces of my boots that you're telling me to pull myself up from. Could you please stop doing that, or just admit to me right here and now that you don't like that I exist? You don't like having to see me and people like me. So we'd rather hear that from you directly. So Real Change has been, I think, instrumental in a lot of things in the past, like House Our Neighbors. Before they became their own org, they were born in Real Change. And then they moved out to run their own amazing campaign and see social housing passed and the funding for social housing passed. We have our paper, which educates folks on what's going on in the city in ways that don't always make it into the Seattle Times or the Stranger or anywhere else. And we talk about the neighboring areas too, like Burien, like a great story that Guy Oren, one of our staff reporter, did about how Burien just, criminalized homelessness even harder than they had before. So we really do exist to hold truth to power, speak truth to power, hold their feet to the fire, and provide opportunities that people have told us that they want to have. And I get to make that happen as much as possible, usually through fundraising, but empowering my staff and just making sure that our vendors feel loved on.
Great. Sorry, I had so many thoughts processing.
Make that grumble noise too. So.
So for my listeners who don't know, Seattle recently, and here's another example. Krystal used the phrase soap and soda. Those are zones. The Seattle City Council recently passed last year, I think it was. Soap is the stay out stay out area for prostitution, right? And soda is the stay out drug area. So people have areas of the city where they're just not allowed to be, which is weird because, you can't prove that someone is engaging in drug use or prostitution. So it's really just criminalizing people that look unsavory, and that people can say, oh, those people are high, those people are selling drugs, those people are engaged in prostitution. And so, criminalizing. I know we had the Stop the Sweeps community hours that I participate in about half the time. We're right on the edge where we do our community hours down in Pioneer Square. We're right on the border of one of those zones. And there was a huge discussion when it passed. Like, do we move? Do we go somewhere else? And, the decision was made to, here's an example of that peaceful civic, I'm the words, I'm losing my words suddenly. But like, even if we're not supposed to be there, we're going to be there. We're going to engage our neighbors. They started. I mean, I've been working, volunteering with them for a couple of years, but I'm just a guy who shows up occasionally to do harm reduction and feed people. I'm not one of the organizers. Those are people who are far more legit than I am. But so they chose to be there because that's where the people were. Like, we have a lot of people who need in Pioneer Square, frankly. There's another group that also does hot meals on Sundays, like an hour or so before community hours, 3 blocks away, for example. Like, people need hot food. So for my listeners, just that's what the soap and soda areas are. I have long been a fan of real change before I even knew how integral it was to helping some of our most disenfranchised community and how much real work they were doing. In part because I've, always been someone who wants to. I've often lived close to the edge. I'll word it that way. So I understand and want to, like, I've never felt. I've usually had a job. I usually know where my next money is coming from. And if someone doesn't and they ask me for help, I'm always willing to give that help. Further, I think on our interview last week, maybe it was in the organizing meeting I was with, talked about with the falling of the stranger and the sort of spin down of the stranger. Real Change is one of the few real newspapers in the area. I think when I said that, I was not keeping South Seattle Emerald in mind, and I want to make sure I give them their props as well.
They're pretty great. And the International Examiner does a really good job. And luckily we all work together, which is the best. We use each other's articles. We network and see how can we support each other. There's a great effort called Save Seattle News that's about to come forward. It has launched, and you can find them. I think it's saveseattlenews.org or .com. Got some good folks behind it, and we're working with them pretty closely to kind of create a democracy voucher type of program for the city of Seattle so that folks can pay into it and the independent news organizations can continue to exist, because we are beyond targeted. Oh God, we're beyond targeted, but also it's at least Real Change. We also have the additional arms to our work. So a lot of, we have jobs, we have advocacy, we have human services. We see people every day and are bandaging up people in our office. And, I had to call for an aid car last week because one of our vendors was having difficulty breathing after having been beat up over the weekend. So, the idea of creating programs like Save Seattle News, where local news organizations can be lifted up by the people and not have to go after corporate sponsorship, what takes away our independence, is pretty important. So just putting that plug in there that it's coming down the pike.
Excellent. Save Seattle News. I'll have to, at some point here, do a search for that, because that's one I've not heard of yet, but I look forward to it, because we do need the independent news, and we need people who are going to be progressive. The Stranger had that sort of reputation for a lot of years in Seattle, but it has wealthy people who own it and who have their own sort of take. We've recently seen the firing of a couple of progressive reporters. And I think the scuttlebutt I heard is they had made comments previously about the owners, I don't know, affairs perhaps. I shouldn't talk, because I have not bothered researching in general. I know that two of the reporters that I valued at that institution have been shown the door, which is unfortunate, and I see less reason to engage with the Stranger without them there. Having people who are doing the real good reporting work. When I mentioned in a meeting I was in that I was going to be interviewing you, one of my friends and listeners, gave Guy some I identified Guy Oren as a real treasure. Someone whose work was so important to our area. And I'm so pleased with real change. It's real change because of those other wings you've got. I am thrilled that that was the organization that started the House Our Neighbors sort of group, and started. We interviewed Jeff Paul, who's an organizer with House Our Neighbors, last year, and I don't think the episode's been released yet, but we just interviewed some of the Transit Riders Union, the groups that are doing. That's what this podcast is about, is getting the groups that are doing the real change and the real work, and talking with them about how they're making that change and how we can all engage to make our world a stronger, better place. So I'm going to use that to segue yet again to your next initiative. You have recently started a group called the People's Community Empowerment Institute. Can you talk to me about that a little bit, and what work you're doing there?
Yeah, the ink is still wet on getting our foundation documents from the Secretary of State, so I'm very excited about this. The People's Community Empowerment Institute, or PCEI. I've been teaching self-defense and bystander intervention and de-escalation and all these really, I think, crucial skills to community groups since 2013, so about 12 years now. I've learned them from folks down in the Bay Area, East Bay Area, Alameda, California. They're where I first got my first street medic certification. So this, knowing that these are all skills that anyone should have. If you see someone being harassed on the street, you should be able to assess the situation very quickly and know how to safely intervene to stop that from happening. And, as I mentioned early on, talking about how, cities are getting more insular, and people since the COVID pandemic are just turning inward and worrying the most about protecting themselves. This is one action you can take, is learning how to speak up for someone else. How to defend yourself if you are a member of a targeted group. I'm a queer individual, but I present straight. I'm also, sorry, dogs. I am also 6'1". I am a large woman. I've got tattoos all over the place, and I usually walk around with a guy that looks like Captain America after he took the serum. So I'm usually pretty safe. However, there are times when I'm not. What if, I'm just with my kids and someone sees me as an easy mark for taking something, or I intervene and it goes sideways. I should know how to protect the person I was trying to help so they can get away, and protect myself so I can go back home and fight another day. I should know how to de-escalate people. If people get really angry, how do you calm them down enough to, again, get away safely? So these are the skills that I'm hoping to teach people through the PCEI Institute. I'm also developing a how to run for office training. Actually, it's developed and it's launched on the website. And it is everything that I have learned from running for office, from when I've won and when I've lost. It comes with templates, Here's a fundraising plan. Here are the local organizations that do endorsements that are very aligned with your values. If you're, and I'm only going to be training people that are to the left. I'm so sorry, folks, if this is awkward for centrists, but we don't have time for you anymore. I am training like really progressive people who have working family values. So it's templates and how-tos, and it's also, I'm developing a workbook with online templates, how to organize in your community. What does power mapping look like? If option A isn't working, here are options B through Z that you can also try, and how to do it, what to consider, who to look to for leadership, because it really shouldn't be people who look like me. As a white woman, I am not the ideal leader for any community. I absolutely know that. So how do you find who those leaders are and either elevate them or continue to do work that elevates their mission? So talking about all those things and keeping the training completely free for impacted communities. I charge businesses for the training, but everything else, every other training is free. I'm teaching one on bystander intervention at the Burien Library in March. That is just free for people to walk in and take the training. And when you leave with skills. And that's the point. You leave better than when you showed up.
Excellent. It's exciting. Some friends of mine and I have been working on putting together some organizer trainings as well. I've seen a lot of these sort of efforts recently, and I find it heartening that there are people who are really working on trying to spread the skill set of how do you organize, how do you work for change. It was one of the reasons we started this, was to try to share that work, share the people who are doing that work. And, it's been enormously beneficial for me. Last year, we talked to a lot of candidates. We talked to a lot of people across the country. And we've sort of, as the podcast has developed, I've sort of narrowed in a little bit, focusing here on my home, focusing on the people doing the work here in Seattle, which for me personally has been enormously beneficial, just getting to know those people doing the real work better. Because building that community, I feel is I like to say that, organizing is building the community necessary, building the relationships necessary for a community to seek and preserve the changes it wants to see. Something along those lines. I should have a better talking point.
I feel like you're onto it. Yeah.
So I'm really excited about the your People's Community Empowerment Institute. So March 2nd, 11 a.m. at the Burien Library, for people who are here and able to attend. Would be the training on the intervention training. I'm going to have to, it's a Sunday at 11 a.m. I'll have to see if I can not schedule an interview on that particular Sunday morning, so I can maybe pop in. I've been, when I was sort of cruising on the PCE website, I noticed that you've got street medic training you're looking for. I didn't realize there were any groups that do the certification for street medics. I have taken a street medic course. I took an intro to riot medicine that Medic Viv and Paradox and Hestia, who are, I don't legitimately know everyone's real names, because that's the
part of the point.
That's part of the point of, sort of anarchist organizing, I would have to say. But they are street medics and real medics who are providing, riot medicine trainings, encampment medicine training. They've got a 4-part series. If you're not hooked up with them, then then I think you should be.
I would love it. So for everyone that's just listening and isn't seeing this, my eyes are so big. I'm just nodding a whole lot. Yeah, I would love to be connected. I think anything that we can do to get practical skills into the hands of people, especially as we're in a really toxic administration that is targeting folks. We've already seen increased ICE raids. We've seen just this last week, coming home from Olympia from a day down lobbying and meeting with people, there was someone targeted on the train for speaking Spanish on her phone, and how dare she, over and over again. And we got to King Street Station and had a bit of an altercation that wound up with me having a swollen hand from delivering a couple of punches. Like that's where we're at. We're at the point of having to defend people and each other. So the more you know the skills and how to patch each other up, how to speak up for each other, I think the more crucial it's going to be.
It is. I will connect with that, because they have put together this team, and they have put together a 4-part series. First course, and they're all 2-day courses. It's the introduction to riot medicine. And I think the second 2-day course is about encampment medicine. The third is about stop the bleed and wound care, and the fourth is about mass casualty events, or the advanced riot medicine. And I am hosting that, the newest iteration of the intro to riot medicine, and it will be March 15 and 16. But I can connect you with them regardless. But if you've got a couple of days and you want to come to that, it'd be great to see you there also.
So cool. I am doing my partner calls it my goldfish dance. I kind of wiggle when I get excited. So yeah, that sounds great. Everyone needed to know that I was doing that over air.
Well, yeah, it's a video podcast. That's part of the charm, is you get to see our lovely faces as we
and apologize for it. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I would love to be connected. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, no, we'll absolutely get you connected. Get you connected for that, because we all need to work together on these things. You've got so many, processing again. You've got so many avenues of your activism, and I'm so impressed. Everyone I interview on this podcast, frankly, I'm impressed with how driven so many people are for change. I am glad to get to know people who seem to have just endless energy for doing all this work. It is amazing to me. Adam and I have often, in the online, in the social media sphere, in the leftist infighting, I often hear there's this huge argument about whether, direct action work or electoral work is, quote, the answer. And, I have long said that, it's got to be both. You can't elect your way out. You can't vote your way out of a problem. You got to build community, build power. But once you have, you absolutely need to pass laws, and you need to have people in power who will enact and protect those laws. So I'm not even sure yet what my question is. I want, from someone with your experience and background, like, what is your advice to people who are feeling disenfranchised, disempowered, and they want to get this work done? I've talked in the past about how difficult this work is. I mentioned it on this show. It's long, hard work, and can be disheartening. So what is your advice as someone who is doing this work and has done this successfully in multiple capacities? What advice do you have for us?
Oh man. I think the first step is going to realize if you're feeling disempowered, then that is a legitimate feeling. A lot of folks will say to push through it, like, oh, you can just do more. It's okay. Here's an avenue. I think because we live in a capitalist society. We live in a society that only values us if we can produce. So it's acknowledging that sometimes you can't produce. Sometimes the best you can do is exist and hope that you can fight another day. And it took me about 2 years to learn that lesson after I lost my re-election campaign on Burien City Council. So 2021 to 2023 was a really difficult time. And I try to pass that forward to people, like, acknowledge the fact that you are at a spot where things are difficult, but also no one can disempower you all the way. You have intrinsic worth as a human being. You have a unique set of skills, of a way of seeing the world, of connection to community members, of familial ties, of any, like, your entire existence is completely unique. And that means no one can do what you do. So when you're ready, when you've acknowledged, like, okay, this hurts, my community is suffering, I need the time to recover from that. And you have to do that. The systems are built on the idea that we are not going to take the time to care for ourselves. So you have to do that. You take the time to care for yourself. When you're ready, find people who are doing the work that matters to you and tell them that you're willing to help. Ask where the need is. I think that's the biggest thing. Instead of assuming that the need is, someone to run for office because you have this huge burning issue with the administration, or like, okay, sure, maybe that is the right path for you, but talk with people. Who are you wanting to represent? Talk to them. Who are you wanting to serve? Talk to them and see if they've already got someone in mind. And if they do, be ready to just put that to bed for a hot second, because it needs to be about our community's needs before our own wishes. And that can be really hard. It's a lesson I learned, but also I think it's really important you take, whether it's a training or you just take the time to write down what you have to offer and why it's important, and hold that close to yourself. And so that when you are feeling disempowered, you know what your worth is, because there will always be opportunities that will pop up. You just have to be ready to say, oh my God, that does align with me. I can do that. A lot of this movement to resist fascism, to push back on wealth inequality, all these things that we're fighting right now requires us to be nimble and quick. And you can only do that if you have a really good understanding of who you are. To stay engaged long-term, you have to have a plan for caring for yourself. And I'm saying this with full knowledge that one of my partners can hear me right now and is probably rolling his eyes so hard, because caring for myself has been the most difficult thing to figure out how to do when there's so much that needs to be done, especially as someone who has, ADHD and autism and kids with the same, and it's the kill switch is not built in. You don't have this immediate way of going, oh wait, I'm at a critical level, I should pull back. It's you go until you explode and burn out. You can't do that. You have to have a good community of people who you're going to listen to. So I think to sum that up, if you're looking to make a difference, if you're looking to engage, acknowledge any hurt, any exhaustion that already exists in your body, and solve that first. Figure out a way to heal that up so that you can be of use to your community in a way that isn't going to drain you. See who's already doing the work, connect with them. And if there is a lane, if you're being asked to fill, if you feel like, nope, this is the time for me to run for office or to engage in community support and mutual aid, then talk to people first. Get to know who's there, build relationships. So it becomes about the relationship of the community, not your desire to be in power or anything else. And then I think there is a space, I guess, to touch on what you mentioned about, is it going to be electoral or community based? If it's done correctly, I think you're entirely right. There's room for a need for both. Community or co-governance is a model that I have believed in from day one, where if an elected leader gets into power, they are committed to passing that legislation to the community groups that help get them elected, that the impact would be felt most upon. And you tweak that, you work together, you meet with them, you're accountable to them, and they hold the kill switch. They're the one that say, actually, thanks so much for your service, but we're ready now. We can step in here, or we've got someone else better in mind. They say it's time for you to be done. It's not you getting into power and holding that office. Like Conrad Lee in Bellevue City Council just announced that he's running for a 1,000th term on the Bellevue City Council, and he's 86 years old. Like, cool, dude. I hope you could do a better job than you have the previous 1 billion terms that you've held. But situations like that where people just keep running and running. Adam Smith being in Congress, he's the only one that has held that seat. That seat was created and he took it. So being ready to step down when you're no longer serving your community's needs is one of the most powerful things that you can do. And it's one of the hardest too. So if you're going to go that route, you have to be prepared if you want to actually advance the needs of your community.
I'm trying to take a lot of your advice personally. So I will note that first off, well, I mean, you say a thing that I often wrap this podcast up with, like, if you care about an issue, there are people who are working on that issue right now, and you should find them and connect with them and build that community. That is the clear, obvious first step. The caring for yourself, that is a thing I need to learn more personally. So I'm going to, as I try to internalize it, I'm going to recommend that my viewers do also. I know, as an example, I took a couple weeks off from community hours, and I texted my partner after I did something like, well, I'm not going to community hours tonight because I'm clearly a terrible person who does not care about the suffering of my neighbors.
Oh no. No.
Which is not like what I love about the West Seattle Mutual Aid Party. One of the many things I love about it, which is one of the groups that I'm a member of, is that they take mutual seriously, and that we need to have a culture of not burning ourselves out, of only doing what you have capacity to do. And it's a lesson I need personally to internalize more, because my gut instinct is it's hard not to, no matter how much I might feel housing insecure and or job insecure, the fact is I've never been without an income for a significant, I spent a few years trying to be like a freelance theater designer and living out of my truck, but it was a choice. and I had a huge network of friends and families. If I had a gig in Ohio or New York or Illinois or Texas, like I knew people, I could crash on couches. I could, like, it was not living rough. And I live in a quite nice townhouse right now, and it takes a huge portion of my income, but it's hard not to feel guilty for my privilege when I spend so much time trying to ease the suffering of people who do not have that same privilege, and recognizing that with the choices I've made in my life, I could have been sleeping rough were it not for the huge network of friends and family I have. Like it is my family, my friends, my community that has provided a safety zone, a buffer for me, and it has and it's hard to not feel guilty about that. And it's hard for me to understand people who believe that their success and their position in society is somehow due to their hard work and their merit, as opposed to just luck and position.
That
So
idea. Oh, sorry.
Please.
I just think about, we talk a lot about the airplane mask, secure your air mask to your face before securing the one to your child or whoever next to you. And I remember hearing that for the first time, or what I remember as the first time on a plane as an adult, and thinking, what the fuck? Of course I would put a mask on the elderly woman sitting next to me, or my kid. I've got 4 kids now. So decide which kid to put on first is its own hierarchy of terrifying parental thoughts. But why would you do that? But as being a parent has taught me, as being in activism or an elected office, or having been unhoused as a child and gone through really shitty life circumstances, if you do not put that air mask on yourself first, you are not around long enough to help anyone near you. You might get a couple, but you also have to think about who else is on that plane and hogging the air masks.
Mm-hmm.
Like the billionaires on our plane, the folks who who outright have said they do not want to see unhoused folks in their communities. They do not want to see queer and trans folks succeed or be allowed to marry or receive the care that they deserve. As a mom of 2 trans kids, that is its own living inferno of fury. There are so many people on that plane with us that are taking their air mask and putting it on, and taking other air masks and putting more of those on themselves or hiding them in their pockets. So if you don't use the air mask assigned to you before you try to help others, you're actually hurting your community, not just in the long run, but immediately. You claim the resources, you have every right to use them to get to a place where you can help others. And then you help others and you fight to make sure they have those air masks too, so they don't need the help putting them on. I like these allegories and examples way too much, but that has stuck with me ever since. And I get infuriated when I hear someone say, but there's so much more that has to be done. I have to do it all. I get that feeling. I feel that every day. And it's taken me this long at 41 years old to learn how to put on an air mask, and I still fail at it, but it's something that is so crucial, or else you're going to peter out, and then you've left your community in the lurch because you're responsible for something. You said you're going to step up and do something, and now you can't. So just that self-care, and whatever that looks like for people, it's not always a nice bath at night with a glass of wine. It's taking your medications. It's going to, it's taking a break when you need it. It's having a date night with your partner every once in a while, or partners in my case, doing your thing. Like you find that break so that you're able to do more.
Yeah, and it seems like, just from my own observation, that a lot of this comes through the bug of the ego, the kind of something that is a flaw within our human system, right? That people want to believe, like you said, Mark, like why would they think of it as anything other than luck? Well, it's because it's the same thing as free will. People just want to believe that they are in some kind of control and that they figured it out better than the person next to them, and I think that you see it a lot. Obviously, the extreme nature of somebody like an Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, these people that have so much money, they now feel completely disconnected from the rest of us. We also see it with our senators and representatives, that the minute they gain power and then therefore more money, they start to disconnect themselves from whatever reality was true to them prior to this new experience that they're having. And that's why I really value people that are successful in life, but remember where they came from. Like Bernie Sanders may be a millionaire, but I appreciate that he's spent 40 years really never diverting from what he thinks is important for the American people. And that just because he's doing well doesn't mean that everybody's doing well enough that just don't worry about it. He has his own problems. I don't mean to bring up one individual person, but it's just an example that if more people that represent us felt a need to lift up those, under them, rather than always champion those above them, we would be a much better country. I always get frustrated. Juliet Capulet. I always get frustrated that, we're supposedly live in a Christian nation, but we do very little to emulate the teachings or the actions of Christ, regardless if you're into that religion or not. It's there on the page. And, we continue to move further and further away from a country that would resemble those teachings having meaning in the way that we run our society. Because I'm not religious at all, but it's very, very upsetting that people can't understand kind of the point of it all, and yeah, we're in a very fraught time of just watching people be as egotistical and as narcissistic and as greedy as they possibly can be, but you're right. I think it's a good analogy for the air mask, because you have to be able to put yourself in a position to survive the crisis, so that you can help others survive it as well. And right now, the plane's going down, so we got to figure out a way to protect everybody.
Yep, 100%.
We do. So for those who are viewing, I kept looking down because Juliet Capulet was like, she's gone into heat, and she was demanding some attention.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, she is a.
I'm so in love with the name. That's a beautiful name.
She was a rescue kitty, and I really ought to take her to the vet and get her fixed, but she doesn't go outside since she turned up on our porch and kept showing up for several weeks. And once we brought her inside, she just my last cat, I let him be an indoor-outdoor cat, and that resulted in a short life for him. And so,
well, they now think that, an example in New York, 500,000 cats may be susceptible to getting bird flu, which is going to be a very big problem for spreading a pandemic in that city. So if you have an indoor-outdoor cat, consider making it an indoor cat.
Yeah,
at least until this passes.
Cats do seem to be more susceptible to the bird flu than other animals, and Yeah, it's going to be, well, that the next pandemic will be the topic for yet another show. But
Well, what about dogs who think they're cats? 'Cause I've got Chihuahuas that they think they're
Sure.
cats. So this is great.
Gotta be worried about that. Yeah. My cat thinks he's a dog, so it definitely goes both ways.
Eat your play date there, Adam. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
I have one of each, but they're friendly, but they don't think they are each other. They're just both jealous of each other. They hate.
Well, it's
So-
American story. Yeah.
We're an hour and 15, an hour and
Yeah.
15-ish in. So
We
I'm gonna
started
start-
talking with Krystal at about a 12-minute mark, so we've been talking with her about an hour and 7 minutes or so. So
So I want to start winding this down, try to keep the podcast somewhat reasonable and respect your time. But I'm also curious because you talked about, like, when you ran for office, you said that people had sort of approached you, and you talk about talking to the community you want to represent, making sure that you are responsive to them. This decision of how to run, when to run for office it's an interesting. Since I've been involved in political organizing, I've been shocked at how small that world is. It seems to be a relatively small world. I have hopes of getting Sean Scott on the program at some point as someone who is a real grassroots organizer who has now successfully made it to the State House. I was obviously thrilled last year to talk with the candidates for city council and had Alexis on twice, once before and once after she won the primary. So we are at a position, at least here in Seattle, where we've got Tammy Morales resigned. So we have another vacant seat that is going to need a special election, I think, this year. Sarah Nelson needs to be replaced on the city council. Seems a high priority to me. Bruce Harrell, we need to replace as mayor pretty firmly. And of course, we need to get Alexis elected a second time for a full term. As someone who is involved in those organizing groups, as someone who has run for office successfully, as well as not, but who do you see? I think Rye Armstrong has announced that they're going to be seeking to replace Bruce Harrell. Who do you see? Who's on the horizon here for Seattle?
Oh man. I love that Rye has stepped forward. I think we need to have and this is not anything against Rye. I love them. I've only recently met them within the last year while going to Alexis Mercedes Rank campaign events and supporting the Cows Are Neighbors stuff. But I think we need a good couple of folks to run against Bruce Harrell as for mayor. I think you need to have someone. I mean, he tries to hold the centrist lane. He tries to say he's not really anything. He's just a hometown guy who's doing his best, and he'll change the situation to talk about something completely different, about football and the needs of businesses and all the things that's not what we're asking you, buddy. That's a nice political answer. So we need folks that are to the left of him that have an understanding of how diverse Seattle is, not just in cultural makeup, but each neighborhood fancies itself, whether it is or not, its own unique ecosystem. And there's some level of truth to that. If you're in the CID, it is very different than if you're in Ballard. If you are in Pike Place and Pioneer Square, it is very different than Magnolia. So you have to have someone who understands that people are the issues that they're bringing forward are very important to them, and you have to also keep in mind who is not at the table. We need someone who asks that question every single time the council presents them with legislation. Every single time it's time for a budget, not just when it's re-election time or there's a major protest, because the officers that you're tasked to oversee killed yet another Black person. There needs to be that level of understanding that this is a systemic issue of underrepresentation and lack of care for every person as a human being. So I don't think it's fair as a community to ask any one person to embody all of that as the potential, as the glowing hope. That's how people get attached to people, and they should be getting attached, in my opinion, to the need that is there and to the goals that we have. I say that as a nonprofit worker who sees people attached to people, and that person leaves, and then there goes the donors with that person. See that as a politician, people get attached. They got attached to me, and then I leave the city of Burien. That should not be the end of their activism and their feeling of safety and connectivity. It needs to be attached to a system of power built from people. So I want to see a few more folks step forward to run against Bruce. Again, fully support Raya. I think they'd be fantastic, but we need a couple more people so that there is options that people can feel themselves plugging in if they feel Raya is too far left or not left enough or doesn't have this policy chop. They should be able to point to someone and say, okay, this person I can see a little bit more because they still hold these values, and that works. We have to get away from this like purity thinking on the left that we have to have a candidate that embodies everything perfectly. Even AOC will let us down. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I mean, the squad will let you down. Bernie, as Adam mentioned earlier, can do some incredible things, and Bernie can let you down. It needs to be tied to the goals that we have. So I'm looking for that. I'm looking for multiple people to step up. I'm looking for people who are willing to hear no. If at a certain point the numbers are coming in, it's looking like it's going to go to someone else on that slate of potential people, someone who's willing to put their ego down and say, okay, it's not me right now. I understand that. How can I help? The cause, not to be too much of like a leftist trope, the cause needs to be more important than the person, but it's true. And that is not the American way. So it's hard to fight against. It's hard to build power when you are taught to coalesce power and hold it central to yourself and find people that support that. But that it doesn't work. We've seen what happens when we do that. We're left with the most progressive city in the US, in air quotes, in the most progressive state, in air quotes, because we keep investing in people as a candidate people, lowercase people, as opposed to investing in the uppercase people, which is our community. So that's what I'm looking at in terms of organizing. Fill the bench, get a lot of folks in there as an option, then champion the person who has the most community support.
That is, I love that answer. I go back and forth in my mind, and I think, I brought it because last year I interviewed before the primaries Tariq Yusuf, Sonatina Sanchez, and Alexis Mercedes Rink, all three. And at some point, my question was like, so what happens as you get through the primary, or as we get to the primaries? There's always that concern about flooding the field and what happens if you have 5 progressives and then the 1 conservative, and are we splitting the vote? But I sort of intrinsically feel that more choices are better choices, and as long as you can solidify behind the person that has the support, and I feel like that happened with the city council this last election with Alexis Mercedes Rink's election, that indeed, as she made it through the primary, like everyone coalesced behind her, and it was heartening.
Yeah.
And then disheartening when Tammy Morales resigned. I didn't even understand. I would sort of like to get her on the podcast just so I can ask her what happened there.
Yeah, I think you've brought it up on every episode since.
It's time for just to let that healing happen and just have her here. People are smart. I think we need to start treating our electorate like the smart people that we are, and that we know that they are. They're not going to vote for, if there's a progressive candidate that puts themselves forward in a pretty, already well-stocked field. But if they aren't presenting well, if they aren't coming forward with great community ideas, like, we will naturally weed people out that we don't want. It happens. It happens with our vote. It happens on how people choose to use their democracy dollars, or campaign contributions, who shows up to canvass. Give them the platform to run and see how they do. And then you coalesce behind them. And I will notice there was one name that was missing from that primary list of people. I think it was Tanya Wu. You didn't have Tanya Wu on your show?
I did not have Tanya Wu on my show. I was, I guess, personally not very interested. And you know, it's weird in Seattle because you looked at Tanya Wu's website and she claimed to be, you know, representing the people and community activist, and it's just not. I'm not in District 2. I'm in District 1, but it's just not my experience. It's not my. You know, she lost a couple of elections in a row and then got appointed, and I was disappointed with that. And then I was just looking at the actions that she was taking on the city council and who she was actually representing. And I did not see her representing her constituency. I did not see her representing. I saw her, you know, she was a Bruce Harrell yes man for the wealthy business interests in this city. I was very disappointed the previous election when Rob Saka had, you know, like had a shit ton of money dropped on him in the last final weeks, and came out successful. I went to a debate at South Seattle College that Maren and Rob were at, and the room was Maren's field clearly. It was like the room was 100% behind her, and he came off as a sort of smarmy debate bro, and I thought it was a done deal. I was shocked and dismayed when Rob Saka won that election, and as a resident of District 1, I'm angry that he is putting forth going to dedicate millions of city dollars to make traffic less safe so he can make a left turn into his kid's fucking school. It's
Kirby. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's been, yes, I was glad that Tanya Wu lost. I was concerned when a position in District 2 came up that she was going to somehow be appointed yet again. I was glad it didn't go that way. And I feel, you know, a lot of my organizing work has been political organizing, though it's been on usually larger than local levels. And I feel this need to get the people in office pretty strongly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, I feel like I love my mutual aid work, but it feels like a stopgap. It feels like a way to ease some suffering today. But it doesn't seem like the avenue for actual change. It's a thing that has to happen because we are in such a terrible place. But to really make change, I feel like we need people in office who are going to support our communities in a different way. So I'm very still focused on who and how to make that happen.
We need those questions of who and how, and I'm glad that you're asking them. It's very disconcerting hearing from vendors who are going through that real change, who are the focus of a lot of these attacks and these policies. And I will say our vendors, so many of them did a impromptu celebration when Alexis got into office. She came along with Tariq and Sanatina came and talked to our vendors. Tanya didn't. We offered it to everybody. I believe she might have toured once before, to be totally transparent. It was before I got there. But Alexis came. She remembered every single vendor's name. At the end of the day, she could say, "Thanks, George, for asking that one question about blah. I'll look into this for you." And she's followed up. So we need people who don't just take office to hold space and hold power, but remember the people that they're fighting for and who got them there. And in full transparency, Alexis staffed me when I was on the Board of Health for King County in her former role at the Sound Cities Association. So I remember telling her in one of those meetings, like, if you ever run for office, I'm going to be your biggest cheerleader. I'm going to be your biggest champion. And so seeing that happen, seeing that go full circle of that has been such an incredible thing to witness, because those are the people who aren't coming up to you and saying, like, I'm going to run for office someday and I'm going to fix the world. They're just doing what they can in the systems that they're in to dismantle things, to make it better for people. And then the opportunity presents itself. They're asked to run and they do it. Then you support them. You protect them. You wrap them in all kinds of protective layers and bubble wrap and things that you can, and you keep them safe. And that's just what I want to see us do in Seattle moving forward, so that it's not a 1-term or a 2-term, or like Tammy, who got bullied completely out of her office to the point of ineffectual, like making it seem like she was an ineffectual politician to her community when she was not. She and I were elected at the same time in 2017 together. And to see her treated the way that she was by existing council members, the way that even the city of Burien council members are treating their progressive two that are there, Hugo Garcia and Sarah Moore, is a disgusting thing. So the more we can protect the people that we put in power and continue to support them, the better.
Yeah, I feel that strongly. I said it before on this show, on our conversation, how thrilled I was that Alexis made it. I was so impressed with her grasp of the policy, with her honest dedication to her community, to our community. We need 7, 8 more of her on the city council.
Yes. Yes. I approve. Let's make that a law. Let's do it.
Okay. So yes, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Do you have anything else you want to share for our listeners about your work and how they can support the work you are doing?
Thank you. Yeah. Support real change. We depend on people buying the newspaper from our vendors. If you see a vendor for real change this year, the badge is a beautiful light blue color. If you see them wearing the light blue badge and selling the paper for $2, buy the paper. Pay them more than $2. You're supporting local journalism, and that money goes directly to the vendor. We don't see a cent of what is given to vendors. Even if you pay over Venmo, we get it directly to them. Just put their name or their badge number so we know who it goes to. If you're looking for ways to get involved and you don't know how to start, if you have decided that elected office is the path for you, if you want to build skills to help your community, check out the People's Community Empowerment Institute. The classes will be free for you. I can promise that for eternity. The classes are free for you. We just need 2 or 3 people to make a class happen, and we'll do it. So gather your friends together, reach out. It's info@pceinstitute.org is my email. It goes to me. If you're looking for ways to run for office, we have that training too. That one is, I think, one of the most powerful things you can do is to eliminate the barriers, like some great trainings that are out there, like the Emerge training or She Should Run, who I've taught for in the past. And they cost a lot of money. Let's not make it cost a lot of money to try to help your community and not have that gatekeeping. So if anyone wants to get involved that way, reach out. I'm here. I'm happy to help. And I love that people are taking care of each other.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And so let me reiterate that for the listeners. As Krystal said earlier, like, if you care about an issue, there are people doing the work. I try to have them on the show. Reach out, get involved, step up, and spend your time. Like, democracy is not a spectator sport, as I often say. And if you are unwilling to get involved and make the change, then how is that change going to happen? So please find that work that you are willing and able to do. Take care of yourself and take care of your community, and fight even though you might not win, because that is what needs to happen. Fighting only when you think you're going to win is a morally bankrupt position. So please get involved, do the work. Adam, can we go ahead and put the info at pceinstitute.org on the ticker for those who are watching visually? If you want to reach out to Krystal and get involved, that is how you'd contact her. And please support real change. I'm going to, when I leave here today, I know that we have a vendor who hangs out at Roxbury Safeway, which is sort of my local grocery store. I'm going to go buy a paper today, and I encourage everyone else to do so.
Yes. Thank you. We love it.
Krystal, thank you so much for being here. This has been a great conversation. I've been thrilled to get to talk with you and get to know you more. If you wouldn't mind just hanging out for a hot second after we wrap this up, so we can talk about how to connect you with some of the street medic trainings that are going on. And so let's go ahead and wrap it. Oh, sorry, please.
No, just said thanks for having me. That's it. Thank you so much.
Oh, I so appreciate you being here. For everyone listening, thank you for spending another hour and a half-ish with us. I appreciate you listening, and we will see you all next time.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Some answers, a little bit of truth. Some answers, a little bit of truth.